I don't know. Would we need to propose to the moon and be like, listen, like
Don't leave.
please don't leave us. Like, we're not gonna come put nuclear waste on you. Please. We gotta be nice to the Earth.
That's the first thing I do.
Because I imagine moon is just looking at us and being like, yes, guys, like,
You guys don't visit anymore.
please. It's got attachment issues.
It's been 84 years. No, it's more like
50 years from the first moon landing this year, right? Yeah, it was 1969, was it? Or, yeah, 669, I think it was, yeah. So, 50 years, that relationship went down the drain, eh?
How's it going, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Geek Inspired podcast with I would say, an OG, long time, back in the old days guy that you guys might recognize if one or two of you are still around from
Making
that time.
us sound so old.
It's a very special episode because we are trying to not mess, but kind of shift things up a bit with how we do how I do the podcast, and essentially the kind of getting people in from the general geek culture space and science communication space is going to be a thing. But every now and then, when I have a very special podcast with my roommate, brother, friend, Dup here, the OG, and we're going to talk kind of science and geek culture and how they get together to make interesting things.
Yeah. So keen to be back. Really,
It's been 4 years.
literally been 4 years.
It's literally that Titanic meme.
I'm just gonna say
years.
life happened. Let's not get into details. But yeah, very very keen to be back on board in a capacity that would suit my needs as well, and time constraints and so on. So very keen. To have a sit down, have discussions, talk about interesting things. I think there's some really really cool topics coming up, and
we got
just keen to talk.
A list that's going to be growing about interesting topics that I would say are generated by things that we just see, stuff that we consume that's not pure science, but brings up scientific questions because, as you might know, both Dup and I are practicing scientists. Whatever you can take away with that, whatever that means.
No idea what that means. What is a scientist?
I would say a practicing scientist is in the process of publishing papers.
All right, yeah, in that sense, yeah, practicing.
Practicing science. One day we might not be practicing scientists anymore.
What would we be then?
Well, I would like to be a science communicator.
Yes.
I'm getting that revac thing. It's getting pretty difficult to get my words together. It's going to be interesting on the playback. But yeah, our first question, Dup. There's a show. Well, there's this movie called The Minions. And it was a so-so movie, but that's because it was a spin-off of another movie called Despicable Me.
All right.
And
that's how you're going about it.
Sometimes being direct is boring. So you have to go about things from outside the box.
You want to be subtle, yeah.
So, the other day I came to you and I was like, because I must have seen some, Minion meme or something. And I was like, in that movie Despicable Me, Gru shrunk the moon and he carried it around like it was like a boss ball or something.
Right.
Right? And I was like, if that actually happened, what the hell would happen to the world? Because the way the world works is intricately tied in by the moon going around the Earth being a certain size, being a certain weight,
being a certain distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would happen? Like, and so with the shows that Dups are going to be on, we're going to essentially going to be putting research into practice. That means that we're going to first speculate. So for the first like less than half an hour, I would say, we're just going to put ideas out there about what we think would happen or what we would like the way something would happen if we had these crazy ideas that are from like movies or series or video games or D&D or whatever, right? And then we'll go back and we'll actually research and see what will happen, and then we'll go back and see whether we were talking nonsense the whole time or whether they got some things right, you know.
So basically, putting like science into practice in a way for the layman. That's kind of the idea with this. Like, everyone likes to sit around and talk about things, and especially with a lot of sci-fi type of movies and even just like Marvel movies with these, you know, they're having such a large influence, and it's getting people to talk about things. Like, I mean, just recently, you know, the time travel aspect, it could be quite interesting. So people are having these normal discussions or so on, but generally what happens or what doesn't happen is that afterwards people go and find out whether they were talking nonsense or not. So we kind of want to put that to the test and see for ourselves as well. Like, do we talk smack or not? Like, do we know something or don't we know it? And either way, we are bound to learn something, and in the hopes that other people also learn a little bit more.
But at the very least, we're going to be learning something new. Because we'd have to research and find out exactly how does these things work, you know. So our first thing is like, what would happen if you pull the moon out of the sky, shrunk it, carried it around like a basketball, and pretended everything was okay?
Well, you could try to pretend, but I don't think it's going to be okay. No, that's the simple answer. Everyone's fucked. That's what will happen.
Okay, so let's start with, I think the main problem is you're taking the moon out of place. So you're taking it out of orbit, which brings us to the question, how do you put it back into orbit?
I think that's a question for later, even.
For later.
Because I don't think you'll get to
mind.
that. We'll put it there. I don't think you'll be able to once you've taken it. But.
You're taking it out of space, this weight, this mass, this force of gravity, out of where it's supposed to be, shrinking it. One question is, how is he actually shrinking it? Like, that would be part of the science. Is he doing something like Ant-Man or Dr. Pym does, where he reduces the space between particles?
Yeah.
In which case, the weight shouldn't
mass
change.
stays the same. Yeah. Mass will stay the same. The question is also like, does the moon have enough mass that if you condense it to that size like that, it potentially might, you know, black hole is the one that pops up. I don't think it is. Does it have enough mass that if you were to put it into like a basketball size or like a tennis ball size? Did Group put it in his
He could hold it in his hand.
He could hold it in his hand. Like, is there enough mass that if you were to condense it into that volume that it could become a black hole? I don't know. I'm quite curious to find out. I legit don't know.
I don't know.
But what would happen firstly is like
you shoot it and it happens really quickly as well.
Yes.
You know.
So the important question is, how does it shrink? And if it's sort of like the Pymtech thing where the space is reduced, would its temperature remain the same? Because the first thing I'm thinking of is like, if you're condensing something, you're putting pressure on it now, it should get really, really hot, right? You shouldn't even be able to hold it. Like there should be a lot of energy coming off from that thing.
But also, well, the gravitational effect might be worse because you shrunk the diameter.
Yeah.
And now you're holding it.
Yeah.
You should be stuck to this thing.
Yeah. Like, you're not putting it into your pocket. It's putting you into its pocket. That's what it's doing.
You're becoming part of the moon.
Yeah. Like, you're just going to have this lump stuck to you and it's going to try and suck you in further.
Yeah, you're going to slowly be, like, fragmented away.
Yes.
it's like,
And if you were to throw it, you would just go with it once you throw it, right? Because this gravitational effect must be so strong.
Could you throw it, all that mass?
Technically, no, but
You would instantly become like a meteor and like just start descending into the Earth.
I would be like, you wouldn't take it out of orbit. Like, technically, you wouldn't be able to. Even if you shrunk it, it would just stay there. It's too heavy. But if we imagine that you could take it out of orbit, then it becomes, then things are really, really going down south.
Yeah.
So
you take it out of orbit, that means that the gravitational effect that the moon has on the Earth now changes.
And let's not forget, now there's not like a big white thing in the sky. So all werewolves, it's late for you now. If you're in werewolf form, there's no turning back. So we just got to put that out there.
Yeah, and to bring it back to real world, consequences. There's a lot of animals that use the light of the moon for certain things.
Most insects,
insects, moths. Why do you think moths fly around lamps the whole time? Because it uses light from the moon to navigate. Then something closer to my field of experience would be like fish, and fish spawning cycles are tied to lunar phases. So if you had to pull the moon out, there could be certain fish or other invertebrates in the ocean that wouldn't have the cues that they need to spawn at a certain time of the month in order to proliferate.
And quite interesting, just speaking about the marine aspect, is I recently saw some research that came out where scientists think that great white sharks, are using like celestial navigation to navigate. And it's totally possible that the moon is playing, to some degree, a big part in that, where the sharks are actually coming out of water, putting their eye outside to have a look at the sky. So who knows what role the moon might even have in that. Yeah. So there might even be effects or consequences that we don't even know about yet, because we haven't studied everything. Yeah. So is that part of it as well? But navigation is definitely a big thing for the insects and marine cues stuff.
How would it affect us? Not having the light of the moon. I think we've evolved out of... I suppose if we were, looking back at the day, light from the moon would have been useful for navigating.
But in all fairness,
hunting at night.
Yeah, but in all fairness, the light would have been optimal only at a new moon. So it's not like every night you had enough moonlight and weather depending, and where if you were just in a bad area where it's always overcast. If you take like England, for example, you wouldn't have, even as like caveman, early humans, you wouldn't have maybe relied as much on the moon during the night, It
wouldn't have been a constant thing. But it would have been useful at certain times of the month.
Certain times, I think modern day, majority of humans, like big cities, where there's a lot of light pollution anyway, I don't think it would impact their lives in the least. Not at all, Probably more people that are still living in rural conditions, where let's say they don't have light available at night, or they can only burn things for light and so on, and you have the moon to help a bit with light in the evening and the night.
What about this? Do you think nocturnal crimes would decrease, like break-ins at homes and...
Maybe it might go up, Well, maybe because the moon is illuminating the area, so it would help the burglar to see what he's doing. But it would also make it easier if there are any cameras or things to pick that up, depending on what cameras are used. Yeah, so I don't really know, but it's an interesting question. I didn't think of that. I did not think of that.
I started thinking what the downsides would be, and I'm like, okay, I think I've heard that, during phases where it's pretty bright, there is increasing crime because criminals can
see what they're doing.
Much easier.
Oh, okay. All right, that's a valid point. Barring there's no cameras in that area looking at stuff.
Well,
it makes sense.
If you think about it, probably like nocturnal criminal activity depends on the weather to some degree. That depends on the light. probably they're going to be coming around like on a thunderstorm. Like it'll be really rough. Probably clever if they tried, but just the logistics of it.
I think also people are most likely to be home when the weather's bad as well.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect as well. But anyway, yeah.
For sure. Also, like you might be more on the lookout during a thunderstorm. Because I feel like your body is like
whoa, yeah,
just like in survival mode.
Yeah, no, like you. I think people people do still get scared of the thunder and lightning and so on. So like there's that primal aspect.
There should be a cortisol response.
Yes,
during a thunderstorm.
Definitely.
We can find a paper for this.
Definitely, there must be.
Now we know what to Google.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I would say up or down, more like tangential effect on humanity in terms of light.
Yeah, in terms of light.
But gravity.
The gravity thing is
where the problem is.
That is the problem.
Because the tides are affected by the moon.
And the tides influence our lives every day. Yeah, especially, most of the people on the earth live in coastal cities.
Yeah.
So most of humanity will be directly influenced by the moon. But the thing is, okay, if you're taking the moon, you're putting it in your pocket and you're coming back to Earth and you're walking around with it like you're casual, I think you would be drowning the whole time. Like isn't all the water just gonna come to you? You're gonna be swimming, my bro.
Like a tidal wave.
You're gonna have to be in scuba gear the whole time. All the water is gonna follow you. That is what should happen, right?
Well, I suppose that'll be one way to fix it. You put yourself on the plane and
imagine
be in the air all the time.
So if you want to destroy a country, you climb in a plane and you just go towards them.
You bring in
massive tsunami. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, the gravitational effect is going to be much higher because the distance between now the moon and the Earth.
And it's a square relationship, if I remember right as well. So
it's an inverse square relationship.
Inverse square, there we go.
So being that close to Earth probably means the water is going to come.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. No, you're underwater, eh? That's all I'm thinking. Because at that distance, that gravitational effect is going to be so strong that it's essentially going to be like in the movie Interstellar, but this time the tidal wave just follows where Gru walks around, for example.
Yeah. Yes, actually, when you picture it, it's like that 2012 movie. It's like, or even like Armageddon.
Yeah, I remember that 2012 movie with the massive tsunami thing at the end. Yeah, that I don't know. I'm literally just imagining all the water of the earth moving to the one side.
That's what I would think would happen. It's not only the water, but the other side of the earth will start coming around.
Well, even the earth where you are will probably start peeling away and coming towards you.
Yeah, because that distance is even smaller.
Yeah.
So, first, whoever put it in their hands is part of the moon now.
Probably dead instantly. I would imagine you are dead instantly.
So, actually, putting it in your pocket and getting to Earth, I don't think is a thing.
No. But we'll give the movie, for the sake of discussion. We'll let that fly.
What do you think? The moon changing diameter would actually affect its orbit? Say if he did manage to shrink the moon,
but it stays in orbit.
But obviously, gravitational effect. He goes to grab it, becomes the moon. Mm-hmm. The moon is just covered in this pink mist or whatever. And so, does the moon change trajectory in that case? Do you think it would?
I don't know, but the diameter thing is actually quite interesting because I was just thinking now, the gravity on the surface of the moon is what? It's 1/3 Earth's gravity or something. Or is it 1/6?
I think 6.
1/6.
That's what I remember. I haven't looked at those stats in years.
Right. But I'm thinking now, if the diameter of the moon was smaller, wouldn't the effect be stronger because you're closest to the majority of the mass?
Well, like we said, the gravitational force is inverse the distance.
Even though, like, you on the moon,
Mm.
right? You're still quite a distance from where most of the mass
Yeah,
is.
but if you shrunk the moon, then the distance to the surface of the moon decreases.
Yeah. No.
So the gravitational effect actually decreases. That's assuming if the moon very like comfortably goes to the center of where it is.
Yeah, like, I would assume that if you shrink it, that is how you would do it. Like, or that is
We
what
don't
would
know.
happen. We don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm imagining it keeps its shape and it shrink, right?
Yeah.
But I
yeah.
have this image in my mind of, like Flintstones. I know, like, Futurama's done it, where you just have like these asteroids, and then there's someone on, or like even Dragon Ball Z, like King Kai type thing. Like.
Mm.
Like, what if you could see someone like standing on top of like this little rock, but it's the moon?
It's the moon,
It
yeah.
would be just
Yeah.
so weird to see that. I have a feeling that the gravitational effect would be stronger.
Stronger.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, now that I think about it, is that it's the distance between the center of the objects.
Yeah.
Right? So if it shrunk and it shrunk into itself to the center,
Yeah.
then the center wouldn't necessarily change.
No, but the distance from where you are to the center of mass becomes smaller now, so the gravitational effect should be larger.
Yeah, on you.
On
when
you.
Yeah, when
On
you're
you.
standing there.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about from the moon to the Earth.
Yeah, from the moon to the Earth. It should be the
You
same.
messed up.
Yeah, you messed up, but I would imagine that it's the same.
In which case, just shrinking the moon shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, because I'm
Maybe.
thinking, like, at that distance it is from the Earth. Like, is the size of it like really relevant? Like, it's more just the mass that counts. That's what I'm sort of thinking with my zero background in astrophysics.
Yeah. I mean, that's assuming that the moon's size doesn't have an effect on its speed. Which is generally
Why
the case,
would
I think,
it?
in space,
Okay,
because
okay.
there's no air
Yeah,
resistance.
it's in a vacuum basically. I mean,
But
like
there must
solar
be
particles and whatever
Yeah.
definitely must have an effect. Because I wouldn't think it would change much, but it's interesting. Like,
Yeah.
if it does, I'm gonna be interested
Because, I mean,
to
it's
know
a vacuum, but there should be some particles that are out there.
why. No, there is. I mean, like, the sun is basically blasting radiation everywhere.
Yeah.
So surely, like it must have some effect on it.
Mm.
If it's smaller, like the surface area is smaller now, it doesn't get hit by as many
Yeah.
like particles and things.
Yeah.
So
Does that slow it down? Does that...
I mean, it can
boost
go
it?
a little bit faster.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Definitely something else to Google.
Yeah, definitely
Because
something else. to
you're
Google.
not just in that case. Yeah, you're changing its size, but surface area to volume ratio, all of that changes. Does it
goes-
change its speed? Is it just mass that's important when it's in the vacuum of space, which is how we understand it to be?
Yeah. How it would
but-
influence, because I'm also thinking like just the mass aspect and the gravity, like the way I understand space-time, if you look at those diagrams showing the curvature and stuff, in that aspect, size is important based on how it
Size
looks.
is everything.
Yeah, size is mass is going to determine how strong it is, but it's sort of like the size of it determines like the range of that effect, the area of effect.
Yeah.
So if it's smaller, I'm just imagining you have even if it's, because if it's bigger, there's more mass distributed across space-time. But if it's smaller now, you're going to get something that goes deeper, if you look at that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that maybe like change the way it also like orbits? Like, I don't know if you look at like its local effect on space time, but I don't know, man. Like I'm probably tripping here thinking about that so hard right now. Like these things are fascinating, but definitely out of our depths.
Yeah. So I mean, there's always those little did you know facts that the moon helps a lot with redirecting meteors and things like that.
Yes.
So in that case, if it starts attracting things and it's smaller, what do you think will happen?
They probably go past. Like,
they'll just go past.
no, but we just said that we think like the gravitational effect on the Earth would be the same. But if the size of it is important, then it will really be important in that.
In that case, surface area is a bonus because it's more
chance of catching something in your pool. Yeah. So in that case, I would agree with you now. Like something would probably need to be a little bit closer to kind of fall into that curvature of the space. Yeah. To change direction. I would think that is important.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit less protection there.
Yeah, this is looking really bad.
Yeah.
Not only for the movie, but if the moon had to straight go away.
That's the one that I'm really interested in.
Yeah. So let's say the moon decides to go like rogue and just like leave a tangent of its orbit and just go hurtling through space, right? And it's not there anymore. What do you think happens in that case? Okay, so everything we said about the moon's light and gravity would happen, except that, okay, now you didn't move to the surface of the Earth. It's just not there anymore.
It's gone. It is completely gone.
What do you think happens with the tides? Because then it'll be like one tidal movement. It'll keep pulling as the moon is going away
until it's far enough that there's there's no effect. But actually,
do you think there'll be like, you remember?
No. Actually, what I think will happen is that, like, because as soon as it moves away in its tangent, like immediately there's less of a gravitational pull or effect on Earth. So the tides would immediately start becoming smaller from the moon's effect, like the moon effect on the tides. Yeah. And then I think immediately the effect of the sun, relative to that of the moon would increase up until the sun then becomes the dominant factor in what would be driving the tides. And then, given enough time, you'd only have one tide, which would be influenced by the sun. Once the moon is so far off that it has no influence, it'll essentially be like interstellar vibes, like one tidal wave just coming through.
One tidal wave.
Yeah, and give it enough time for a lot of water to accumulate, the tidal range will become much higher. That's what I'm thinking what should happen. So that will be really bad because, I mean, people have seen the videos and things that like National Geographic's done, the shows where like, well, what if the ice caps melt by so much and water level rise by like 2 meters or 5 meters or 10 meters, where they run those scenarios of cities being underwater. All of that's going to happen every day. Like it will be really, really bad in that sense. All major coastal cities that are like at a low elevation, bug it. Now all those people need to move. Yeah. So you're going to have like mass migration of people that would need to happen overnight essentially. Yeah. Otherwise they get trapped. It's going to be chaos. Like if we then start to look at the knock-on effect of that, like economic effects, like people are going to like, they can't sell their property because no one's going to buy it, right? But they need money to like move away, find something else. It'll be absolute chaos on that aspect, like apocalyptic level, I think, because 2/3 live by the ocean, or like majority of the people.
This will be a Thanos snap.
Yeah, this is essentially what happens there. And now is it like 2/3 of the people rely on like the ocean for their primary protein source? Now you lose all that infrastructure you have at your coastal cities for that food. Where are you going to feed the people? You're not going to feed them. No. How? It's end. Like that, it will probably be the end.
Silver lining is that there's less people.
Right, and the other silver lining is that you always know where the tide is, because you just look at what's the time of day by you, and you're aligned with the sun. Yeah, so you're going to know, shit, the sun is coming up, I better run, or something like that. Be close to the water. That'll be bad, but...
Everybody living for the night.
No, that would be No, now that I actually think about it, I think like humanity is buggered.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
from the economic aspect.
Do you think, like, if we knew the moon was gonna leave, what would we do to counteract it? Which I think is a question we can answer in the next part of the episode. In the future when we record, because we're gonna go back and do some research.
Yeah, I think we should just leave that question. Yeah, like how could you
would
prevent?
We prepare?
I don't know. Would we need to propose to the moon and be like, listen, like
don't leave.
Please don't leave us. Like we're not gonna come put nuclear waste on you. You know, please. We got to be nice to the Earth.
That's the first thing I do.
Because I imagine moon is just looking at us and being like, yes, guys, like
guys, don't visit anymore.
Please. It's got attachment issues.
It's been 84 years. No, it's more like
50 years from the first moon landing this year, right? Yeah, it was 1969, was it? Or, yeah, 669, I think it was, yeah. So, 50 years, that relationship went down the drain, eh?
And we'll end on that sad note and come back in the future. We'll see you guys then.
All right, cheers.
Several days later.
And we're back in the future. It's been 2 weeks since we talked about the moon being gone.
And Despicable Me.
Despicable Me, yeah. And so we went back and had a look at some of the questions we were asking during the episode. Stuff that we didn't necessarily know, but had a kind of an idea about. Well, that's the premise for the whole show, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're putting that into practice. So the first question we asked, okay, so what would actually happen if the moon were to just suddenly disappear?
A lot of stuff.
Oh,
a lot of stuff, actually. That's what I like. What I realized from this experience more was, all right, so I knew like some things would happen, but there were other things that I didn't consider at the time, which was quite interesting. But yeah, the first big thing is like the night is just going to be so much darker.
Just black.
Just black.
Well, the stars are still there.
Stars are there. Yeah, I mean, like stars are going to look way better, you know. So
we have electricity.
We do have electricity.
Yeah,
we do have electricity. But yeah, I mean,
but we wouldn't have this like celestial body like reflecting the sun's light.
Exactly. Like the night sky is just not going to be as pretty. Even though the moon's just white, it's pretty. So that would happen, but with that, it might not implicate like us humans as much, since we do have electricity to light up areas. Although rural areas, this would be a real concern, where moonlit was handy for people if they were still moving about late at night. That would be quite handy. But the effect on animals would be a bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Where some of the ecology might change because there are.
I would say all of the ecology is going to change.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just saying might, since we haven't seen this happen. But no, you're right. Like there will be a change that occurs.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be multiple reasons. It's going to be, for one, the light is gonna go. For two, the mass is gonna go. So yeah, it's gonna be, for one, lunar phases, and two, tidal movement.
Yeah,
and tidal movement is massive for marine.
Yeah, for marine stuff. Terrestrial, I think it's more the fact of the light being absent is going to be a bigger thing. Like, I mean, even there, you have a lot of nocturnal species whose behavior is going to change immediately, and that is going to have some sort of effect on species that are awake and active during the daylight. Like that balance is just going to be thrown out of proportion. So some populations might boom all of a sudden, right? Simply because now, where they would have been hunted at night under the moonlight, now they can just go crazy, have a good time. And others might die out because now it's a lot harder for them to get food during the night.
Yeah.
especially if they're hunters. Like,
So
I think
whoever's-
predators are going to struggle.
Especially the predators that kind of rely on that extra light.
And
it'll
where
be
are all
really
the
tough.
moths going to travel to? Like,
I have
and
no
like
idea.
that's going to be quite a big ecological. Like insects who use moonlight, like that could have a big effect with potential pollination benefits they provide to plants.
Yeah.
Like, what if they're not moving where they need to normally move to?
Yeah, because they're not orientated in the right way. And like we discussed in the first part of the episode, that's why like kind of moths circle around
Yeah,
a lamp, because it's trying to orientate, but the lamp is too close to it.
yeah,
Whereas like the moon kind of, if you move like 100 meters, the moon is in relatively the same position
yeah,
between the spots, but like not a street lamp.
yeah. From that distance at the moon, it will appear as if it's never
As
moved.
if it
Yeah,
hasn't moved, or you haven't
Yeah.
moved.
basically.
Light, I think in that case, light pollution from cities becomes more of a problem.
It should actually then attract way more insects if you think about it.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, you are going to start attracting insects.
All these
start-
insects, birds are going to be coming in from everywhere after the insects. Now
to
it's
follow
free
the
chow,
insects.
yeah. And they're just going to shit everywhere.
I suppose.
And that's going to be like nasty.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, people's
It's gonna be
cars,
bad for,
man.
for flight.
It's going to be way worse for flight,
Birds
yeah.
everywhere, One of the other questions I asked, because it's kind of related.
Yeah, I think let's do the light aspect first and then
Sure.
go to
Okay,
the next thing,
so
yeah.
I asked the question is like, what would happen to like people if you suddenly like remove the moon? But they brought the question of like, does crime rates actually increase during the full moon or when the moon is full? And do crime rates increase when the moon is full? And what's interesting about that is that there's kind of like this correlation that people have. Like people like to kind of speculate that the lunar phases are kind of tied to us in a certain way, kind of in this like spiritual thing. And, you know, especially when it comes to like legend and stuff like werewolves. But at the end of the day, it also comes down to light. Like, if you want to conduct any type of activity at night and you don't have electricity, the moon is going to be your friend. So, like, what I've found recently is that there's actually music, Native American music, that's made specifically about conducting war during the full moon. It's called Full Moon Wars.
Okay.
Because that is the only way you could
Do it at night.
exactly like the logistics.
You're not going to light a fire, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
On the other hand, you know, when the human body was evolving, like in Africa, we also were under the effect of predation from nocturnal predators. So there's also a cycle, especially with lions, where the behavior changes with the moon phases. And it seems that our behaviors also cycle with that. So there is a bit more anxiety.
Depending on the phase of the moon.
Depending on, the phase.
And that is still measured in modern day society.
I don't know. I think it's really difficult to measure now because of how our
Cities and whatever,
Yeah,
But if you were to like go look at people who live either on like rural communities on the outskirts of the city where they still like, you know, have access to a lot of modern stuff, but just where they stay, it tends to be dark at night. I wonder if that would still be present.
I don't know about that. That paper that I saw was only about like the ecology of light, specifically pertaining to like lions, and they kind of use that as an explanation for why potentially our behavior might change.
Mm-hmm.
But the studies that I've seen, or kind of like the meta studies, generally tend to say there's no correlation between lunar cycle, at least, and human behavior. Although a lot of people claim it to be, there are people who have reports, like especially like police officers, who say that crime kind of increases during like a full moon. But all of that just might be coincidental that there's light.
Yeah.
over like lunar cycle, it being like full moon. Like,
Well, I'm pretty sure they have all the data necessary to run a statistical analysis and actually see if there's any correlation. So,
yeah, generally inconclusive. There was one paper, I think, that was more recent that did say that behavior of schizophrenic people changes with the lunar cycle.
Ooh.
I don't know why. Might be related to, how we evolved and that sort of thing.
that is quite interesting.
But I think it's generally a thing where there's just no funding for this unnecessary study. Even though...
Well, if there's going to be a zombie apocalypse and, people are going to be exposed to more like darker moonlit conditions, it might
we need to know.
Need to know how people
get too excited.
Yeah. Because, I was just thinking of like a simple experiment, like you put people in a room, you switch the lights off and you measure like a response. You could either like hook them up with a couple of electrodes, or you could even take some blood samples and measure cortisol responses. And I think it would be very likely that when it suddenly goes dark, people do have a bit of a stress response, which can only be from our ancestry.
So. Fear of the dark
is real.
An innate evolutionary thing.
And there has been songs made about fear of the dark as well. Iron Maiden comes to mind as like...
Hey?
Iron Maiden.
They
They literally have a song also like Fear of the Dark.
Fear of the dark.
They sing about this concept. So, in the past, it would have been scary if it's like dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be late for you because you don't know what's watching you.
For sure. Especially like if it's something they can see better.
And we could also probably make the argument that like as humans became more intelligent over time, they also invented more stories and legends and myths. And there are things associated with darkness, like evil things. And so people tended to become more superstitious over time. So I think that fear could have sort of become stronger potentially. That all these connotations are now attached to darkness.
Yeah. Anything else on the light topic?
No, nothing that comes to mind off the bat now. I think that was the main issues, was the light. Yeah, let's get into some basic physics. So the tides comes in with a bit of physics.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So if the moon suddenly disappeared,
that mass in the sky is
gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely gone. Okay.
Terrifying.
That would be terrifying. So the main thing that people link with the moon is its effect on tides. So I think let's get into that one. It's a bit more in our field as well. So we wouldn't have this diurnal tide going around, and basically tides would rise and fall a lot slower because the main influence now is the sun.
Yeah.
Right. And they say it will be about 1/3 of the current fluctuation. And this is going to have a big effect on coastal communities, particularly like for ecosystems, because now at low tides, organisms are going to be exposed for a lot longer than they used to be, and they'll also be inundated with water for a lot longer than they used to be. And they aren't adapted for those conditions presently.
No. I mean, like, with certain species, especially like corals, like, if your water level is higher than it normally is, it's almost devastating. You essentially drowning out the corals, because they need a certain amount of light to come through so they zooxanthellae can photosynthesize. I mean, I should probably explain what zooxanthellae are.
Right. But I'm also going to bring up, like, at what depth is this a real concern, though? Because the tidal heights are already there. I mean, okay, so like this one says the tidal would rise and fall slower at a slower rate, but also like the effect. I didn't get anything that necessarily said like how big the tidal range, whether the tidal range would be different. Because that would be the issue for the corals, is now suddenly they are under more water than they used to be at high tide. That I think would be the issue, and I'm not too sure.
Well, yeah, what I'm referring to, like drowning out the corals, is more of a sea level rise thing.
Yeah, it's more of a climate change issue,
Yeah, more of a melting
which is
which
a real
is also a
concern with
thing.
this as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, like, there are organisms that are that sensitive to change. You know,
Yeah.
like a fish is not going to care if the water column is 5 meters.
No, it's not gonna care.
But the thing, like, the point that I'm trying to make is that there are going to be organisms that are so sensitive to this change that
for
they
sure.
are wiped out,
For sure.
and they take the rest of the ecosystem with them.
Yeah, I mean, like from being exposed for only 6 hours to potentially what, like 2/3
12
longer,
hours,
like.
maybe, yeah.
Right, the tide takes a lot longer to come in. You exposed for like maybe double that time or something. Like they're not used to that, so that would be a real concern. But even just if the tides also have a lot to do with how the currents function in the ocean, and now currents are going to start to be influenced by this tidal thing, that this tidal shift in its normal oscillation. And that has a larger knock-on effect on global climate,
For sure.
right? So there's like real weather and climate
My
issues
understanding
here.
of the currents, though, well, it depends which currents, but the currents are mostly due to like temperature and pressure differentials.
Yeah,
between
but
the poles.
consider the moon is moving around and it's moving this mass of water.
Massive water, yeah.
So heat is being distributed indirectly by it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that would be a big issue. So and that's something that would then impact weather, which then feeds back into like, are the communities that are impacted by this change of weather able to adapt, or are they almost in a sense just able to
None
survive
of the
it?
moons
So
suddenly went away.
if it suddenly went away, it's going to be havoc, absolute havoc. You know, so what they also say is that when NASA is looking for planets out in the universe that could potentially harbor life, one of the things that they are actively seeking out is, does the planet have a large moon? Because moons, from the looks of it, tend to stabilize a planet's climate. If it wasn't for the moon right now, like our axial tilt we'd be fluctuating a lot more.
Yeah.
So weather patterns would be more crazy and unpredictable and whatever. So the stable climate is driven by the presence of the moon. So when that suddenly goes, weather is going to get crazy, and natural disasters, there would be, high risk for natural disasters to happen with direct impacts on humans, which will be a real risk.
I'd also see that the moon is kind of slowing down our spin. And I did watch a video about somebody modeling how the moon, the Earth and the moon, how the Earth used to spin before, like, the moon is the way it is now.
Right.
Apparently, like, a day used to be like 6
hours, yeah. Crazy, eh?
It's like, what? And then suddenly it was different.
But just think about that for a second, that here's this massive object or a body of mass in space-time. And this other one is going around it and slowing it down with nothing touching. It is quite amazing if you think about it.
Yeah. Space physics. Astrophysics.
The stuff is amazing. So interesting.
It is pretty cool. Also, what I did learn is that the moon is actually moving away from the Earth.
Yeah. And they say that if the moon's mass were to become smaller, that it would actually come a bit closer, because...
if the moon's mass got smaller.
Yeah, if it decreased, it would come a little bit closer. I mean, like now, the effect... consider like how it's shaping space-time around it. And if it's now smaller, like it wouldn't, exert such... Like, it wouldn't change the shape as much. So it would be more influenced by the shape that the Earth is making, and start to come a little bit in. It's like the pull is a bit stronger in some way.
I would have thought that if the moon was larger, or was more massive, that it'd be more attractive.
I just saw it here. I was like, okay, maybe it's a momentum thing as well, considering with the speed it goes around.
Perhaps.
Like, because momentum does factor in mass.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something like that. Oh, something else that popped up. Interesting.
Sure. Interesting. Maybe we should triple check that at some point. We might revisit these with like a remastered episode.
For sure. So I think we covered all the main issues with that. So the next one is where the Despicable Me aspect comes in, as well as what if the moon got smaller? Since we already kind of touched on that as well. And two of the questions we had was, right, would the moon be able to turn into a black hole if it's like shrunk to, such a small size, or like what size would it need to be if it actually turned into a black hole? And this was quite interesting that I found out was, it would be extremely tiny, like 1/10 of a millimeter apparently. Like,
Alright, that's nothing.
that is absolutely nothing, right? The moon is pretty big compared to that. It's huge compared to that. So that they call the Schwarzschild radius or something. It's basically just the radius that would be present if all that mass collapsed in on itself.
Yeah. That's really tiny. Like, I don't see that ever happening.
Freaking tiny. Yeah. I mean, it probably won't happen for the moon because there's just not enough mass. It's like, it's so small that it would essentially evaporate with Hawking radiation almost immediately, I think. So, probably won't happen.
It just doesn't have the mass.
It's just not big enough. I think they even say, like, I don't even know if our sun has enough mass to eventually go into...
become a black hole.
Yeah. Maybe like way down the line, but I don't know. I'm not an expert in this.
If it charted a few planets.
Oh, it'll get bigger before it gets a lot smaller though. So yeah.
It's expanding.
Humanity needs to get off this rock at some stage. We have to.
I think we got time.
Yeah. So the other thing attached with that is if it gets smaller, like what would happen to like pressure and temperature of it? Because we were thinking like, okay, so now Gru shrinks it down, and he takes it with his hand. Apart from the gravity aspect of that, which we call bullshit on, would it be hotter?
That's a good question.
It would still weigh the same. So however he solves that issue, let's go run with that. But would it get hotter? Because if you think of like gas, and you basically increase the pressure of it, temperature tends to go up. But that is because electrons get excited. Whether you compress them down together and they bump into each other more, increase in the heat, or whether you actually put heat in there as a measure for, or you're just excited. Like if the temperature goes up, then the pressure also goes up. So there's a direct relationship there. So this was something interesting that I found. And if you just sort of look at that relationship, you would expect the pressure, or sort of obviously the density, is going to increase when the volume becomes smaller.
Yeah.
Weighs the same, it's just now super dense. But what was interesting is that basically it comes down to if the temperature, or as they say, it's difficult for the temperature of a solid object to increase if you apply more pressure on it. So if the pressure increases, it doesn't really heat up. It basically will either sort of absorb the pressure up to a point where, if you think about put concrete under stress and then it cracks, like that energy is now released in the crack. So what would need to happen, there needs to be some sort of a work that goes in there, which comes down to like, does it change size?
Yeah.
Right. So in that example, you would expect it to suddenly just get a lot hotter if it suddenly got smaller, which is pretty cool. But it was interesting that something that is already a solid, if you put pressure to it, doesn't really get hotter.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing. I was like, oh, okay, this is something that I didn't really know or understand. Like that is how it was, because everything is already compact. It's already squeezed together essentially, and if the volume changes, they squeeze even tighter. So energy must be dissipated in some way. But if it's already tight and you just put pressure, it just becomes more rigid or it fractures.
But yeah, we don't really know how Gru is shrinking the thing.
No
That's the
idea.
question, yeah.
No
I
idea.
think I tried to look, but I wasn't going to watch the whole movie.
Oh, the one thing was like, okay, so there was also a question we had that if the moon were to suddenly leave its orbit, there will be some sort of an effect still present up until it's far enough away.
Yeah.
And then the question sort of is like, how would it leave its orbit? Like, if it just sort of immediately has enough, suddenly it just has enough speed to go off on a tangent, that would be closer to the realm of it like suddenly disappearing. But whereas, like, let's say if it was like moving away, at just a faster and faster rate, that would have a bigger effect on our orbit around the sun than it's just like necessarily going off on a tangent, I would think. Because there'd be more of a interaction that's still present between the Earth and the moon as it moves away,
Yeah. It's not very likely that the moon is just going to go off on a tangent.
Yeah, very unlikely.
Unless it gets hit by something.
Or let's assume that there is some rogue object with a lot of mass, like traveling through space. It comes in our solar system, goes between us and the moon, and it just drags the moon off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Because, I mean, like if our galaxy and the Andromeda galaxy meet, that's kind of what they think would happen. Like, planets would get flung everywhere because, all these gravitational effects would be everywhere. So, yeah, let's assume it happens like that.
You should have like a rogue planet just fly through.
Close
would
enough.
we even be able to fit anything like that massive between us and the moon?
Yeah, I mean, moon is actually far away, man. Like, what's that? I don't remember off the top of my head. I can't do the numbers thing. Like, it's not me.
No, I don't like remembering numbers either. I think that's why we were biologists instead of mathematicians. So yeah, for sure. If the moon just left orbit, how do you think? Okay, let's say we know that there's something coming through that's going to shift the moon out of its orbit. What do you think we'd be able to do about it?
I don't think there's much. Like,
stuck.
Yeah, like I wrote down
Not
bigger
being a
to stay
spacefaring
because I don't think currently there's anything we could do. I mean, we have only recently demonstrated that we could land something on like a small moving object like an asteroid, like humanity's demonstrated recently. And I think those are the sorts of things where we potentially are able to shift them or change their orbits in some ways. But the moon is just way too big. Like, we're not at that level.
It's not impossible. Yeah, it's going to be impossible.
It's simply impossible.
We're not at that level.
Nope, we're not at that level.
Elon Musk needs to come save us.
We are not at that level. I cannot think of anything at the moment that would be at like that level where you could stop that, like at that catastrophic level where it could just go off.
Yeah. We'd be done.
We currently can't do jack just to move it like an inch.
Let's say if we did have the power, how do you think we would have to solve that?
I have no idea, to be honest. Like, are you just... Maybe you painted a color and like, like with the rays, with the heat that like it heats up.
One side
but it's kind of like, that's kind of what's happening already to some extent, There's a dark side of the moon, so one side's a lot cooler than the other side.
Yeah, this is true.
I think it's just too big.
We'd be done. There's no way.
Nothing we can do.
Not on our current level of technology.
Nothing we can do. You gotta hope that some aliens are gonna rock up and be like, listen guys, we'll sort you out. This happened to us and we don't want this to happen to any other civilization out there. We're gonna help you out.
For sure. Alright, Dup. Any concluding thoughts on this matter?
Not much.
General suckage.
General suckage. Yeah, I don't want to like leave it at that note. Gotta be like, we gotta hope for aliens to help us out if something happens. Other than that, and if aliens rock up and they threaten to take the moon, like we just need to do what they say. I'm gonna leave it at that. There's nothing we can do to stop them.
governments need to pay whatever they need to pay.
Whatever they want, we have no choice. That's essentially what it comes down to. If aliens decide to rock up, like humanity's greatest fear of like, is there life out there? And it's intelligent life that is so advanced, and they just come hold the moon ransom, there's nothing we can do.
We're done.
Nothing we can do.
We're done. Are there any light notes?
There are none. Well, okay. Right. Night skies are going to be prettier if you look at stars. That's it.
Yeah.
That's about it.
But even that's going away because like light pollution from our cities are like kind of blocking out the star.
Well, if you're going out to the countryside now, it's going to be a lot better.
I suppose maybe
Yeah.
we'll be able to see like the Milky Way galaxy.
Right? That would be really cool. Actually, like, you should be able to see the Andromeda galaxy as well if you know what to look for, and that should be something that then comes better into view. That would be quite nice to see as well. Like where we stay, we don't have the luxury of like actually seeing even the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just light pollution is just too much here. It sucks.
Yeah. Alright, so that's it for this episode of the Geek Inspired podcast. We've had an interesting talk about what would happen if the moon went away.
Yeah, and just to say, like, non-physics experts, like, just putting that out there.
No, we're not. We tried.
It's difficult to even understand some of these things.
But the point is just to point out that you know how important the moon is to us. It's not just a thing that you see in the sky that's kind of like shiny and looks nice like every now and then, like especially on a full moon or during an eclipse.
But
like,
the only time that I think the mass people actually care about the moon.
Yeah, like during an eclipse or something.
Yeah.
You know, like. But the thing is, like, if the thing wasn't there, we wouldn't be here.
No, life would have definitely come about differently as well.
Evolved differently.
Definitely. Or even if it wasn't here at all, yeah, I mean, weather might have been really different. Like, there might not even be intelligent life, for all you know. So we might not be here. Conditions would have been very different.
I think maybe we'll revisit this topic at a later point, the more we know about
Yeah, yeah.
And
Interesting.
also, if any of our listeners have any questions, we will try and answer them, or find maybe somebody who can.
Yes.
Next time we might have like a call in from a astrophysicist.
Yeah, that would be quite nice.
And have a better idea. But otherwise, stay tuned and cheers.
Cheers.